Hello learners, let's continue discussing Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. In our previous class, we dealt with the summary of the novel, the plot and also the inspiration behind the writing of A Tale of Two Cities. Now let us discuss the characterization, themes, motifs, symbols and other literary devices adopted by Dickens in writing this novel. A Tale of Two Cities is considered Dickens' greatest historical novel. It traces the private lives of a group of people caught up in the cataclysm of the French Revolution and the terror, the reign of terror that followed. The best story I have ever written was Dickens' own verdict on A Tale of Two Cities, and the reader is unlikely to disagree with this judgment of a story which combines historical fact with the author's unsurpassed genius for poignant tales of human suffering, self-sacrifice and redemption. Dickens took advantage of the novel's serial publication to experiment with characterization, plot and theme. He described the work in a letter to his friend John Foster, cited in Rudy Glancy's A Tale of Two Cities, Dickens's revolutionary novel, as a picturesque story rising in every chapter with characters true to nature, but whom the story should express more than they should express themselves by dialogue. The novel that emerged from his experimentation is now regarded as one of Dickens' most popular and most innovative works. It's interesting that A Tale of Two Cities is told from the omniscient or all-knowing point of view. The narrator or storyteller, who is never identified, has access to the thoughts and feelings of all the characters. Dickens characterizes the men and women who populate A Tale of Two Cities less by what the book's narrator or the characters themselves say and more by what they do. As a result, the novel does seem somewhat modern despite being set in the 18th century and written in the 19th century. The main characters in the novel are Dr. Alexander Manette, Lucie Manette, later Lucie Darnay, Charles Darnay, Sidney Carton, Therese Defarge, Ernest Defarge, Jerry Cruncher, Mr. Lorry, Miss Pross. Major thematic topics include duality, revolution, resurrection, violence, centrality of women, and aristocrats versus peasants. Dickens frequently uses the motifs of darkness, social restrictions, and duality. Major symbols found in the novel are Madame Defarge's knitting and motherhood. An analysis of these aspects could lead to a greater insight. Before we go into a detailed analysis, let's first attempt discussing various important characters. Why do you think characterization is important in a novel?
Characters add life to a book and we can even relate with the characters.
That's true. While it may not be very easy for a modern young reader to relate to the characters in Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, there are many ways in which we can understand them, identify with them and even empathize with these characters. Let's first take a look at the Manettes, Darnay and Carton, the main characters in the novel. Dr. Alexander Manette, A Tale of Two Cities is in many ways Dr. Manette's story. The doctor's release from the Bastille begins the novel, and the mystery of his imprisonment creates tension throughout the book. The reading of his letter ultimately condemns Darnay to death, forcing Carton to sacrifice his life. The doctor is one of the novel's few complex characters. His ability to forgive brings him happiness in his daughter's marriage and her children. However, his past demand for revenge has the power to destroy his life and the lives of his family. Lucie Manette, later Lucie Darnay. Dickens describes Lucie as being beautiful physically and spiritually. She is the golden thread that binds many of the characters' lives together. A reader can best judge Lucie by her actions and influences on other characters rather than by her dialogue, which tends to be melodramatic and full of stock sentimentality. Dickens portrays her as a loving and virtuous woman who inspires great love and loyalty in other characters. Although Lucie is a flat character, she is an important one. Charles Darnay now. Although Charles Darnay rejects the Evermore name and inheritance and moves to England, he cannot escape his family history. Trying to make amends to an unknown woman whose family was wiped out by his father and uncle, he is arrested for treason in England. Trying to save a jailed family servant, he is arrested in revolutionary France, where he is tried not once but twice. His sense of responsibility motivates him to right the wrongs, but he is otherwise a passive character who lets events direct his fate rather than trying to control it himself. Darnay represents justice and duty, qualities he had inherited from his mother. Sidney Carton is Darnay's double and alter ego. He has wasted his life on alcohol and apathy. He makes his intelligence obvious through his ability to analyze cases for Stryver. It is clear that he had opportunities for success, but for some reason he chose not to take them. The only noble part of his life is his love for Lucie and his affection for the rest of her family. His love for her is strong enough to induce him to give his life for that of her husband. Carton represents the hero who sacrifices so that society might renew itself, a prospect he envisions before he dies. Through his death, he redeems his sins and is reborn through the life of his namesake, the son of Lucie and Charles Darnay. Let's now move on to discuss the Defarges and Jerry Cruncher. Thérèse Defarge, childless and merciless. Madame Defarge is the antithesis of Lucie Manette. While Lucie creates and nurtures life, Madame Defarge destroys it. Her knitting represents both her patience and her urge to retaliate, because she knits the names of her intended victims, a vicious registry. In seeking to avenge her family, she has acquired the same ruthlessness as the men who destroyed her family. Symbolically, Madame Defarge stands for the intensity and bloodthirst behind the revolution. Her relentless drive for vengeance makes her strong, but it eventually destroys her because she is unable to comprehend the powerful love that gives Carton the strength to die for Darnay, and Miss Pross the courage to confront and defeat her. Ernest Defarge. He was Dr. Alexander Manette's servant as a young man, and he seems to have a filial reverence for him during the Revolution. However, when the doctor was newly released from prison, Defarge was not above exploiting his insanity as a spectacle to further the revolutionary cause. As a revolutionary leader, Defarge organizes the jacquerie and helps lead the mob in storming the Bastille. He bases his desire for revolution more upon a desire for positive change than the bloodthirst of his wife, as demonstrated when he resists denouncing Dr. Manette and young Lucie simply because of their relationship to Darnay. His wife interprets his scruples as weakness. Defarge represents the more rational aspect of the revolution. Jerry Cruncher is a porter for Tellson's by day and a grave robber by night. He provides some of the little comedy in A Tale of Two Cities. His euphemisms create a topsy-turvy world in which grave robbing becomes respectable and prayer is degraded to flopping. In Digging Up Buried Bodies, he parodies the theme of resurrection. Similarly, Jerry's scenes of wife abuse at home provide a darkly comedic contrast to the idyllic domestic scenes in Lucie's Soho home. Let's now take a look at women as central characters of the novel. The characters around whom the action revolves in both London and Paris are women, Lucie Manette and Madame Defarge. Additionally, Dickens uses women throughout the book to represent the moral climate of a group or family. Although Dickens may not develop his female characters as fully as he does some of the male characters in A Tale of Two Cities, nevertheless, the women provide the men in the novel with an emotional foundation that causes the men to act for or react against what the women represent. Lucie and Madame Defarge, for instance, drive the action in their respective spheres of influence. As a golden thread that binds lives together, Lucie is a passive character who influences others through who she is rather than by what she does. Her goodness enables them to become more than they are and to find the strength to escape the prisons of their lives. On the other hand, Madame Defarge stands at the center of the revolutionary activity in Paris as an active agent of change, even when she is just sitting in the wine shop and knitting her death register. Madame Defarge instigates hatred and violence.
How does Dickens portray ordinary women in novel? I mean, women other than the other main characters.
That's a very insightful question. Dickens portrays the other women in the novel as either nurturing life or destroying it. Mothers play an especially important role in this sense, as Dickens differentiates between natural and unnatural mothers. Women such as Darnay's mother, Madame Evremond, and Lucie's mother, Madame Manette, represented mothers who die young but leave their children with a sense of conscience and a sense of love. Madame Evremond's exhortations to Darnay to atone for the family's wrongdoing, for instance, motivate him to risk his life in order to help someone else, even if that someone else happens to be just a servant. Lucie is also a natural mother, nurturing her daughter and protecting her from harm. The women of the Monseigneur's court, however, represent unnatural mothers who care so little for their children that they push them off onto wet nurses and nannies and pretend that the children don't even exist. Similarly, Dickens portrays even the ordinary mothers from poor background who do nurture their children as unnatural, in the fact that they can spend the day as part of a vicious, violent mob, killing and beheading people, and then return home smeared with blood to play with their children. the behaviors of both the aristocratic and the peasant women are destructive, in that they either create an environment that lacks love and guidance, or they guide the next generation into further anger and violence. What do you think is the theme of a book? Does a novel have only one theme?
Is a basic idea that is dealt with in a work of literature. A novel can discuss many ideas and therefore can have many themes also.
Right. Themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in a literary work, and a novel can have several themes. Themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in a literary work. There are many themes in A Tale of Two Cities. Let's take a look at some of them. Themes of suffering and resurrection. The ever-present possibility of resurrection is central to the novel. With A Tale of Two Cities, Dickens asserts his belief in the possibility of resurrection and transformation, both on a personal level and on a societal level. Connected to the theme of the possibility of resurrection is the notion that sacrifice is necessary to achieve happiness. The revolutionaries proved that a new egalitarian French republic can come about only at a heavy and terrible cost. Personal loves and loyalties must be sacrificed for the good of the nation. In choosing to die for his friends, Carter not only enables their happiness but also ensures his own spiritual rebirth. Though Dickens sees the French Revolution as a great symbol of transformation and resurrection, he emphasizes that its violent means were ultimately antithetical to its end. The theme of family is also dealt with very effectively in the novel. While this is a novel about war, it's also a novel about devotion. Various types of family ties thread through this novel, offering multiple opportunities to compare the ways that families deal with difficult situations. Since the aristocracy in France passed on power through inherited titles and lands, entire families became the targets of the revolutionary uprisings which sparked the new regime. Themes of war and loyalty. As the poor and downtrodden of France take to the streets, they spark a bloody and violent revolution. Dickens' novel explores the complicated relationship that emerges between the political and social consequences of revolution. War seems to test the limits of all sorts of ties. The characters learn how to honor the promises and the relationships which matter to them, even when those promises seem impossible to hold. The theme of suffering is another very important theme of the novel. The poor of England have it pretty bad. The poor of France have it really, really bad. There's no food. The noblemen press rural peasants to give up every cent they earn to fund exorbitant parties for the rich. People get locked up for decades without ever getting to go to trial. The prime cause of human suffering might just be human nature itself.
Can we interpret The Tale of Two Cities as a political commentary on class system and judiciary?
Yes, while we cannot interpret the whole of the novel as pure political commentary, there are overtones of political commentary, and he does make comments on the judiciary as well. A Tale of Two Cities demonstrates how rich the rich actually are, One guy even needs 4 servants to make his hot chocolate every morning. And you could watch a video of Marcus St. Evermond preparing himself to go to bed. And he does not prepare himself, he has a whole lot of people helping him do that. It's this sort of excess that breeds discontent, especially when the poor are on their hands and knees in the street to lick up the drops of spilled wine. The French Revolution began as a critique of the aristocracy. However, as Dickens demonstrates, the classless formation of the new French Republic, it becomes yet another form of class violence. Someone's always in power, and the powerless always suffer. Dickens also explores the hypocrisies and the idiosyncrasies of the justice system in A Tale of Two Cities. As the central characters of A Tale of Two Cities find out, no one can really escape playing a political role when nation is in turmoil. The other major theme of the novel is the theme of morals and ethics. A Tale of Two Cities explores the agonizing consequences of revolution, such as how freedom can too easily become another tagline for fanaticism. Sure, revolution can bring freedom, but at what cost? Dickens makes us think about the ethics involved in revolutions and the morals of people in various circumstances. Let's also take a look at the motifs and symbols used by the writer in the novel. Motifs are recurring structures, contrasts, and literary devices that can help to develop and inform the text's major themes. Dickens uses doubles very effectively. The novel's opening words, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times," immediately establishes the centrality of doubles to the narrative. The story's action divides itself between two locales, the two cities of the title. Dickens positions various characters as doubles as well: Lucie and Madame Defarge, Carton and Darnay. Shadows and darkness. This is another motif. Shadows dominate the novel, creating a mood of thick obscurity and grave foreboding. This atmosphere contributes to the element of mystery and also manifests Dickens' observations about the shadowy depths of the human heart. Shadows continue to fall across the entire novel. Imprisonment is another major symbol and motif. Almost all of the characters in A Tale of Two Cities fight against some form of imprisonment. For Darnay and Manette, this struggle is quite literal. However, the memories of what one has experienced prove no less confining than the walls of prison. Manette, for example, finds himself trapped at times by the recollection of life in the Bastille and can do nothing but revert, trembling, to his pathetic shoemaking compulsion. Similarly, Carton spends much of the novel struggling against the confines of his own personality, dissatisfied with a life that he regards as worthless. Symbols are objects, characters, figures, and colors used to represent abstract ideas or concepts. The broken wine cask, with his depiction of a broken wine cask outside Defarge's wine shop, and with his portrayal of the passing peasant scrambles to lap up the spilling wine, Dickens creates a symbol of the desperate quality of the people's hunger. But it also evokes the violent measures that the peasants take in striving to satisfy their more metaphorical cravings. Indeed, the blood of aristocrats later spills at the hands of a mob in these same streets. Madame Defarge's knitting. Even on a literal level, Madame Defarge's knitting constitutes a whole network of symbols, for she stitches a registry of all those condemned to die in the name of a new republic. But on a metaphoric level, the knitting constitutes a symbol representing the stealthy, cold-blooded vengefulness of the revolutionaries. The golden thread. Lucie, with her golden-haired beauty, becomes the golden thread that unites her father with his present, not allowing him to dwell too much on the horrors of the past. She unites Carton to Darnay, Dr. Manette to Darnay, Mr. Lorry to the family in general. Lucie becomes the reason that Charles escapes the grasp of the Republic's justice. In one terrifying moment, Jacques III speculates about how wonderful it would be to see her golden hair on the chopping block of the guillotine. The charm of Lucie's influence, however, makes this an impossibility. There are several other motifs and symbols that add interesting dimensions to the overall reading experience of the novel. Dickens may be writing about the French Revolution in A Tale of Two Cities, but he is also exploring human emotions and reactions that are not specific to any one historical event. As Dickens wrote, "Crush humanity out of shape once more under similar hammers, and it will twist itself into the same tortured forms. Sow the same seed of rapacious license and oppression over again, and it will surely yield the same fruit according to its kind." In other words, human suffering isn't simply an 18th century French problem. A Tale of Two Cities, with all of the poverty and injustice it displays, is an exploration of conditions that will persist just as long as violence and iniquity continue to flourish. Although A Tale of Two Cities is a major social critique, it's also an exploration of the limits of human justice. What is justice really? Is it murdering people who murder your family? Is it imprisoning people related to those people? When does justice start becoming injustice? These are big questions, and they're still pretty relevant today. Ask yourself if you can think of a country in which innocent people are locked up for their political views, and you can come up with several names. The closer we look, the more real the situations in the novel appear to be. And the characters don't seem all that fictional. A Tale of Two Cities does have great relevance even today. Dickens, the storyteller, is closely linked to Dickens, the philosopher. A Tale of Two Cities is an interesting story. More than that, though, it's also a mediation on some of the most pressing existential questions which trouble humankind. Do we really know anything at all about the people around us, even the people that we love? Can a single life make any difference in a world filled with hatred, rage, violence? Times of strife make these questions all the more pressing to answer. But as Dickens reminds us, the answers are easy to find. However, thinking about these issues does make us more sensitive to the people around us, and that could make us better people. I hope you have all enjoyed doing the novel A Tale of Two Cities. The novel shows that the revolution does not bring an end to suffering. Dickens doesn't expect suffering to remain in the past. The causes of suffering aren't historical. In fact, the prime cause of human suffering might just be human nature itself. But reading novels of this kind does give us insight into human nature and the nature of life itself. Thank you.